Well, Alan, thank you so much for being here. This, of course, is Alan Woellhart, and I'm John Strinkowski. And how are you doing today, Alan?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So, what was life like for you growing up?
Very poor. Didn't know it, but we were dirt poor. And I had a chance to go back when I had gotten grown, and I realized that I had grown up in sort of a ghetto. It was very enlightening to me to find out that I had grown up that way.
Alan, where are you from? I know that you're not from around this part of Alabama. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got to the state?
Originally, I was from Gary, Indiana.
Okay.
I was reared there, and when I was just about 17, we moved to the south. My grandparents actually lived in the Jasper area of Alabama, and so my mother wanted to be with them in the last years of their life, and she was.
So there's a couple of things that I know that you're passionate about. Your dogs, are they rescue dogs? You said they were rescue dogs.
No, they were dogs that came up after the hurricane.
Okay.
A while back.
Rescued dogs.
Yes.
I also know that art has played a big part in your life as well.
Yes, it always has been. My brother was very gifted, and I was jealous of him, so I picked up the pencil and never put it down. So.
I can see that, yeah.
Well, the thing that sticks in my mind is that we always had food on the table, whereas people who lived around us did not. And
Do you think that that's a testament to your parents, say, caring for you?
well, my parents were the type of parents that they put a roof over your head, food on your table, and that was about it. There was not much in the way of affection or loving one another. We were sort of distant growing up in the same house.
Looking back on that, is that something that you missed or something that you really think you would have benefited from, or do you think that the way that you are today is because of that? The things that you see in yourself as good attributes, is that something that came out of you not having that?
Yeah, it's very, very much so. If you came into my house today, you would think that it was a museum because there's so much stuff in it. And I think that when I grew up, there was a hole in my life, and that hole was things. And so I filled up my house with things, and now I realize that I really don't need all the things that I have, but I don't know what to get rid of.
You think that that hole is still there?
Yeah, it probably always will be.
Now, I know that a lot of people say that faith plays a big role in feeling that certain part of their heart that always seems to feel empty. And I know that faith has played a really, really big role in your life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, you're talking to somebody who tried to commit suicide 3 times. And so crying out to God was very much part of my life. It still is.
Like you were saying, just really kind of humbling yourself and finding yourself in a point of desperation.
So I went to the Episcopal Church. There are things that you can do in the Episcopal Church, but there are things that you can't do if you're gay. You can't be a priest, which is what I always wanted to be.
So what was it like for you when you found that out, that you couldn't be what you aspired to be because of a lifestyle?
Anger, resentment, but I worked through a lot of it.
What was it like for you finding out that you also had contracted a virus that would be with you for the rest of your life?
Originally, I felt dirty. I felt there was something in me that I could not clean. I couldn't wash off. And that persisted for many, many years. But then the tide turned, and it was sort of like I realized that this was sort of my mission in life, was to make sure that no one else went through what I was going through.
So when was it that you discovered that you had contracted HIV?
I was diagnosed on June 7th, 1989. I'll never forget the date.
So how soon did you go public with your diagnosis?
Maybe about a year and a half before I did.
When was that?
Well, I had gotten to the point where the people that I worked with couldn't work with me because they were so very much afraid that they would contract the virus from me.
Wow.
So they made it very difficult for me to work there. I mean, extremely difficult. They were trying to get me to either be fired or for me to quit. I decided that my life would be full of educating people, trying to support people who had just been diagnosed. I became a volunteer at the clinic and worked there for 8 years. I didn't want anybody else to feel alone.
Did you feel a sense of freedom after you left the workplace to really do something that was now passionate to you?
Yes, because I realized then that the rest of my life would be filled up with things that I wanted to do that was beneficial to the world, and try to give back to the world. That's always been sort of the thing with me. There are people who really do try to make the world a better place than what they found it. That's my goal. I might not accomplish, but I've tried to.
So the 1917 clinic is UAB's HIV/AIDS clinic, and you've been involved with them for a number of years. So what can you tell us about the people that you've met or the staff that you've interacted with there?
The staff never touches a person in that clinic without them feeling that they are actually loved. That's a gift. That's a gift that you don't find in any other clinic establishment that I ever know. They care so much. It's amazing how much they care. They work long, long hours, but they try to meet that with as much compassion as they can. It's very special.
They're not just there to punch in the time clock.
No,
That's great. How did most people respond when you let them know that you were an AIDS patient?
The first people that I told when I found out was all in one weekend. I told my family first. I called my mother, and she got my brothers and my sister together, and I told them. Next told the people that I worked with, because I knew that eventually insurance forms would be coming in and they would know exactly what I had, so there was no way of keeping it secret. So the next people I told were my church, and I went in that Sunday and I had already talked to the priest, and we came to a sort of an agreement. I really didn't want to tell them at first, but he spoke to me and he said, "These are your brothers and sisters, and if you don't tell them and something happens, they will feel angry because you didn't." So it was a gamble, and I was very afraid, and I didn't want to pass the cup of wine if people were uncomfortable with receiving it from me. So I got up that Sunday and we always had the announcements first so that church flowed right on through. And I told them that I had AIDS. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. And they all came up and took from the cup. I was lucky.
So most people responded very, very positively towards you. They didn't want to make you feel that you were on the outsides, because all this time you haven't been on the outside.
Well, I would say that most of them were very positive. Too many people thought that it would never happen to them, that it didn't happen to white middle-class men,
Right.
that it happened to the African American community, the fringe communities. That's who they thought had it. And they always thought that the person that had it had IVs stuck in their arms,
Right.
and were walking around with them and were gaunt and had no body fat and were skinny as a rail. But I had to show them that that was not the case. A person with AIDS could look like the same person that sat next to them on a train or a bus or a plane or in church. That's when it became important for me to tell my story.
That's good. Do you think the timing of all that happening was beneficial?
Yes, it was. It was sort of like growing up with the disease. And I'm still growing up with the disease.
So I've got this news article here. It was a really, really interesting read, but it says that a lot of people in the 80s, as reported by journalist Randy Schiltz, despite their knowledge of having the disease, continued to knowingly spread the virus, as they pleaded personal rights. However, in this case, personal rights clash with public health. Do you think that the history of AIDS has shown that there's a need for carriers to better understand the situation they're in with responsibility, or rather that the public needs to be more lenient?
This was something in the 80s that hit the gay community hard. Today, people think that they can have unprotected sex because the medicines are better, and they just don't understand that some people can't take the medicine.
Right.
And sometimes it is a death sentence, no matter what they do. The craziness still happens.
So Dr. Laracy at UAB's English department has put together a play on that subject, on reducing stigma, and it's entitled One Clear Light. And you, Alan, you're mentioned in this play, and you're written in as sort of this cross between your life as an autobiography and a character who's going to be depicted in a production. And the whole focus of this play is really around the stigma reduction of AIDS. I know that it's not completely done yet, but what are some good things that you're hoping to see come out of this production?
Actually, I saw the portion of the play that I am in, and I don't know how to say this. I was never one and never wanted really to be in the news, but I have done the news stories. The play is different. It's like a gift that was given to me, and I never thought that I would ever be in a play. I'm a gay man and I don't have children. My brother couldn't have children. Our name at the end of our lives will be gone, absolutely gone. But my name will be in the play. It makes me feel good.
It's kind of your continuation. It's like a legacy that you're leaving. Being able to be part of this production that's really a big focus on the way that you're living your life right now.
I can't tell you how overwhelmed I am. When I was first approached about it, I thought, how can you really do it? How am I really going to come off in this thing? Was I going to like it? Was I going to hate it? It was so powerful to me to be able to sit there and see myself on stage. See a mirror image of time that had gone by. It was incredible. Not many people get to experience that.
So tell me a little bit more, Alan, about your involvement with the 1917 Clinic.
I wanted to be the person that they met. All they were there was just for the treatment. So they would go home and it would be now another month before they could get back in to ask the questions that they needed to ask. I would sit down on the sofa next to them and I would say, I'm a patient here. And immediately it was sort of like, oh my God, now I know somebody else that has this and who is going through this.
It's people coming into a new family.
Right, a new home. I help get rooms for people. I help raise funds for people. I run the talent show for people. I am in charge of registration for the people that come. So there are things, that's what I do now.
Now you mentioned earlier that you were in charge of the funds that are raised for the region. I kind of wanted to focus on that a little bit, on a little bit of a different topic, and kind of go into what the cost is of living with AIDS.
The cost for people to come to the clinic is astronomical. There is no way that any of the patients can afford the medications. It's really disgusting how expensive it is. But the quality of life does not come from the medications. The quality of life comes from those people who are with you in the fight, that lift you up on the days when you can't get up.
So this has really been quite the journey for you, if anything. So if there was one thing that you really wanted to leave an audience with, there's one long-lasting question or mantra you get from your experience and your legacy, what would that be?
Well, it doesn't have to do with HIV. It has to do with what is fundamentally who and what I am. I don't know if the audience can tell I'm a gay man or not. I am a gay man. I have been called everything that a gay man can be called. We are all human beings, whether it's color, whether it's sexuality. We need to treat each other as human beings. Because if you don't, then you're losing humanity.